So thanks so much for joining us. I'm sure we'll have a couple other people jump in. Avin, so this is off the heels of one of our trainings. So everybody here might be a little weary of hearing me talk. So this is a good transition to have you jump in. Can you talk a little bit about your background and how you find your role to being the SVP at Austin?
Yeah, so just real quick, I'm originally from Indonesia and I grew up in Australia. I went to boarding school there, and then when I was graduating from high school in Australia, I decided I wanted to come to the US to go to school. So the academic year between in Australia is from January to December, whereas the academic year in the US is from like September to like July or June kind of thing. So in between, so obviously when I graduated in December and I was going to school in September the following year, I had 9 months to basically not, I thought sit on my ass doing nothing, but my mom was like, you won't be doing that. She sent me to Nigeria, where I kind of interned at a company that my uncle was running, just to kind of learn general business knowledge and experience, if you will. So that was exciting. I felt like all that kind of put me in a good position going to college. I went to school at Ohio Wesleyan University, just north of Columbus, a small liberal arts school. And I was fortunate to really make some good contacts there, one of which was very well connected in the soccer world and was able to kind of introduce me to the front office of the Columbus Crew, which is the Major League Soccer team in Columbus. And I got an internship between my junior and senior year. And essentially my internship was, hey, Vin, here's the white pages. Call anyone you see on the white pages and sell them tickets. And I was like, what? And I wasn't even able to leave my phone number as a callback. I had to leave one of the reps' phone numbers as a callback. So I don't even know, I didn't get any reward for the work that I did, which was, I guess I didn't really know I didn't know anything of anything at that point, so it didn't matter. But when I graduated, they offered me a full-time job. So I took that on and I was an inside sales rep, basically part-time, pounding the phones, trying to sell tickets. And I guess I had a level of success where in 3 months they offered me a full-time role selling full menu. So I sold season tickets, partial plans, group tickets, renewed accounts, premium tickets, hospitality. And long story short, over the course of 3 years, 4 years, I continued to have success selling. And I found myself, one of the top sellers in the league. And then eventually I got offered the opportunity to manage the group sales team, and then managed the entire sales team. And then, and we had a lot of success in Columbus. I think back then from the outside, it may look like it was a difficult place and it didn't really do very well. But I can tell you internally, we did a lot of things during my time and Brett's time as well, where we changed a lot of the business structures around to see a lot of success. And eventually, there was a saga. Our owner in Columbus eventually became an owner of the new expansion team in Austin. And he tapped me on the shoulder to come start this project up in Austin, which was a career defining and a watershed moment in my career, maybe. So it was a no-brainer. I had to do it. I came and took the VP of sales job and was really able to kind of build this business from absolutely nothing. So didn't deal with legacy issues, but had the pressure of making sure we did everything right from day one, because this would impact, future generations. And I feel like we did a hell of a job. So, I've been fortunate enough to be involved in this project, and it's been unreal. I mean, not only is this organization fantastic, we happen to be in probably one of the best cities in the country. So it's been fun. That's kind of a little bit of myself background wise.
I love it. And it's such a cool path to where you've been today. And we can certainly get into Austin FC and some more general sports business questions down the line. But let's start with sales. You were an all MLS salesperson, sales leader. You sold season tickets, group tickets, premium tickets. You've done all of it. Regardless of what product you're selling, what environment you're selling it in, what are some of those truths that are just true regardless of what environment you're selling or what product you're selling?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So for me, it's a few things, right? Like, what are the things that I can control? I know that I can control. That's the most important thing. Like, that's the tangible thing that I know I have influence over. And my goal was to make sure I mastered that, right? So what was important to me was a couple of things. One, make sure I'm an expert, right? Like, I'm a professional and I'm an expert. If I'm going to call someone and try and sell them something, a product, whether it's a pen or whether it's a computer, whether it's a sports ticket, I better know all the information about it, right? Like, I gotta sound like a genius. That's important. And then the other things that were really important, that, and this is important for me in terms of hiring now, like, work ethic is probably the most important thing to me. I have very little time for people who don't work hard, especially because I know I slogged to get to where I am today. And I think that that deserves an element of respect for people to kind of work hard as well. So, but I worked hard because I knew that that would give me an edge over the next salesperson, right? So working hard is just a non-negotiable. And then, like, one of the things I learned as I grew older, and one of the things I learned from Brett and even Brett's mentor, Bryant, is this ability to be able to organize yourself to maximize your potential. So when I was a young sales rep, it was just me, like I said, picking up the white pages and calling people. There was no rhyme, there was no reason. And as I became a smarter and wiser rep, I started to prioritize things and organize my day. So, like, prioritizing leads, keeping track of like what the priorities are and where things stand, and then also making sure that I'm efficient with how I do it is always going to give me that little bit of extra edge over the next person. So, one of the things that we did was like sales, like reports that we had to provide. It used to piss me off so much to have to send Brett a weekly sales report. But when I became a manager, I appreciated it because really it allowed me to identify what leads are really important and need attention and what leads are not. And it made me be able to identify, where to spend my time and be more efficient with my day. And that was really something that was an eye-opener for me, because I can tell you throughout my time, I've definitely had reps that may technically not be the best salespeople, but just by hunger and strategy and organization, put them at a level where they were competitive enough to be considered, a good sales rep. And conversely, I've had sales reps who are, extremely, extremely talented, but getting them to remain organized or getting them to be efficient with their day really held them back from progressing. So, those are things that are important to me. But the most important thing is work ethic, because I can't teach someone to work hard, but I can certainly teach someone how to sell.
Yeah, I love that. And, you know, talk about, when you talk about kind of, the analytical approach to lead organization and thoughtfulness, what did it specifically do for your career, that level of organization? So, it instead of just being, it's the exact right point, but I want people to understand, like, I am not an organized human being. Avin, you've been in a house I've owned, that. But when it comes to knowing my business, I am incredibly organized about that. Like, what does that yield for you, just to make sure that from a business standpoint that you are organized every day? I know you touched on efficiencies, but
Yeah,
kind of hear how it really
I guess
benefits you.
I guess the best kind of response I have is, it was an aha moment for me, and I'll give you kind of a scenario in my career where a light bulb kind of flickered above my head, not because I switched it on, but because someone else switched it on for me to basically teach me a lesson, right? So, we may get into this later, but I was really, really desiring an opportunity to become a manager. And for a variety of reasons, I got passed up on more than one occasion, and it frustrated me. But eventually I did become a manager. And when I became a manager, I automatically thought, okay, I know how I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a good manager, whatever. But I didn't really put like brain power to it, if that makes sense. And the first week I was a manager, and I was a manager of a group sales department. And I was the manager, like maybe a quarter of the season in, and we were not doing very well as a department at that point. And someone from the league, like a vice president from the league, came down to the club and asked me, how am I going to get our department to hit goal, given that we're in a compromised position today. And I just started spitting out shit. I just said, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And the VP looked at me and said, do you not have this written down somewhere? And I said, no. And he said, you have to be able to have a proper plan in place, right? Like, you have to build a business plan to get to where you need to go, because a business plan gives you guidance along the way. And you can build your business plan to be nimble so that you can make some adjustments here and there, but you have to have something that you can kind of latch onto and act as a North Star for your entire process to get to where you need to go. And I felt so embarrassed, because I, sitting here, thought I was God's gift to earth, deserved to be manager 4 years before I did become a manager. And it was a teaching moment for me. And I spent the next week putting together this business plan that was like fully intense, because once I learned the lesson, I learned it, right? So I put so much damn detail into this business plan. And the key to it, and this is something that I would say I do pretty well at, is once I build a plan, I stick to that plan, or not stick to that plan, but I use that plan as a basis and as a guide for me to get from point A to point B. And I try not to veer too much away from the spine of the plan, let's say. And I was able to put some of those things in motion, and we hit goal, like very comfortably at the end, which was such a rewarding feeling. But I can guarantee you that would never have happened if I just kind of handled the season off the cuff, right? Like, if I managed my way through off the cuff rather than having like this guidepost, that never would have happened. So to answer your question, Brett, like, being organized to me is extremely, extremely vital, because, and as a leader, it's extremely vital, because it's not just you're also impacting all your people around you. Because they're relying on you as a leader to be able to guide them through this plan. And if you can stick to the plan, then you can go to bed at night thinking, I did everything I could to get to where I needed to based off the plan I built. And that was good. And by the way, the plan is also good because you can bounce that off of people. Like in my case, I was able to share it with that VP 2 weeks later. And, he was able to give me some feedback, but at least it was constructive conversation, as opposed to when I first had the conversation with him and he said, you don't have a freaking plan. So it was a good learning moment. And I think that's vital, not only as a leader, but also, everything we do it's a business, right? Like, even if you're managing your own accounts, that's your own business. You have to have a plan for how you're going to get to where you need to go.
I love that. It's, a lot of sales reps walk into the office a lot of days and just like, oh, I hope this phone rings, like, because otherwise I'm kind of screwed. And,
Right.
if that doesn't ring in the first couple hours, and I'm going to have to write some emails, or I'm going to have to make some calls, as opposed to knowing exactly where I need to go every single time I walk in the office, understanding the types of leads I need to drive, understanding what I need to do on game days to give myself more lead opportunities coming out of game days, and where can I do to drive leads from a networking standpoint, or a meeting people standpoint, and then doing all those things and trying all those things and being organized about what's working and what's not working, so you can just kind of keep putting yourself more and more good positions to be able to make sales. And
100%. And part of that, I would say, is making sure you're able to identify what that goal is at the end, right? Like, if you're just making a plan without this target, then it's equally pointless. So you need to have like this goal at the end. And the best thing I would suggest is that goal is always like somewhat aspirational, but because it's so far away, it's at the end of the year, it may look like a star, right? Like, it may look like it's so far away. And it's important to be able to break that down into more tangible and easily definable, like short-term kind of initiatives. So that way, and you got to be smart to design it so that along the way, eventually all these little goals reach you to where you need to go at the end.
yeah, I know you know him really, really well, but it was the thing that stood out to me the most about Phil Goldfarb in working with him on the season ticket sales side was his goal was 2 season tickets every day. And that was, and he didn't get them all the same exact way. And some days he didn't get them. The next day it was 4 tickets. And some days he got 8 tickets, but the next day was still 2 tickets. Like, the accountability, like you talked about, that high level strategy of what do I need to accomplish every single day. It's different from groups, it's different from seasons, but as long as you put it in place and you execute on it and you think about it and you try to, and you have something that you're working off of and tactics to be able to get there, you genuinely have a way of figuring it out by the end.
Absolutely.
So let's go back to that, because I think it's good for this group to be able to hear. I was there when Avin was making that transition from salesperson to manager, and certainly for someone that had the success as a salesperson that you did, it took a little while for you to transition into management. What were some of those big learnings from you from that time as a rep to moving into that position? Because I can tell everybody here, when I was interacting with the crew for the first time, the odds that Avin were going to was either going to quit or get fired were probably a lot better than Avin still working with the organization, by the time that Clark took over.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was one of those things where I always felt like my success warranted my next opportunity. And that may be true to a certain extent, but it's not the entirety that that you don't deserve anything, you earn it, right? Like, you have to earn it. I felt like I earned it because I had ridiculous success selling, and I was recognized across the league. So, like, the good news is I was selling, and I was selling at a high tick and really, really doing well. The bad news is, my attitude maybe wasn't 100%. So when I got passed the first time around, I said, okay, whatever. The second time I got passed again, and I started getting a little petulant and frustrated because I felt like I said I deserved and to get that opportunity to be a manager. Now, part of it was me being having a bad attitude, but part of it was also like a culture that maybe wasn't great in the environment that I was in, and maybe a leader that wasn't great at that time. And it took two things to kind of converge into one. It took the right leaders to come in, right, to help guide me as well, because I needed that guidance, right? So Brett came in, and I would say Brett probably looked at this and said, why is the guy who's number one on the board in sales, top 5 in the league in sales, or whatever it was at that time, like, why is his career stagnating? So it takes a leader to be able to ask that question and kind of form their own opinion rather than kind of take on what maybe the perception is to begin with. But it also took me to be like having a mental change and adjustment to have a positive attitude regardless of the environment that I'm in, right? Like, what are the things I can control? As I said at the beginning, I can control whether I bring positivity or negativity into the world that I'm involved in. And that was a conversation I had to have with Brett. And then, like, I was also fortunate because Clark, who's now my chief revenue officer, who was the VP of sales at that time, he also had the same question, like, why is this guy like stagnated? Why am I being told that, we may have to consider whether he stays on with the club or not? So he took me to coffee and just asked me questions. And I told him, right, like, what did I have to lose at that point? And he took a chance, and Brett took a chance to give me an opportunity. And I would like to think that I didn't like let them down. And it was a learning moment for me, but I had to also be lucky that the right leaders came into place. So, it was partly my fault because I didn't have a positive attitude, but it was also partly the environment that I was in that really didn't cultivate the opportunity for me to kind of take it to the next level. So I was fortunate and blessed from that perspective.
Yeah, and I think the thing that I think it certainly caught Clark, and it certainly caught me, was Avin cared, and I think that was the big difference, right? Like, was Avin being a little bit petulant at times? Was he being difficult at times? Yeah, but he did it because he really cared about the success of the organization as a whole. He cared about his individual success, was proud of his individual success, and I think that's a lesson for everybody that's on this call today is care about your individual success, care about the success of the organization. And if you're finding yourself in a room with a lot of people that don't care as much as you do, like, raise some hell, like, say some things, because it's either you can help change the room or you are just in the wrong room and you need to go to a different room because it's probably not the right spot for you.
And by the way, that's also like, being a product of an environment that may not be great is also an opportunity for a door to open to kind of become a leader, right? I think if you recognize that there are certain things that can be different and should be better, I think when Brett mentions raise hell, I think he means it in a way where, take initiative, influence things, influence positive environment, influence change for the better. and kind of display that leadership quality that maybe you need anyway to be a manager, right? So like showcase like how good you can be in a difficult time to make it difficult for that next person to say, I'm going to pass on this guy. Because you have, whether you know it or not, and I didn't at that time, you always have an opportunity by your attitude and by your demeanor and by what you do to change people's opinions and influence people the way you want them to.
Yeah. And Avin, I know you know this better than anybody here. A lot of this environment really has a DNA of Major League Soccer's National Sales Center in it with what we do here. And I know even you're vice president now, I believe, as a National Sales Center graduate. But you and I have also seen many National Sales Center graduates that didn't make it. What's your biggest advice, having not necessarily gone yourself, but having seen a lot of the successes and the failures? What's your recommendation that people here do? You might walk in with an advantage to the room, but a lot of reps lose that advantage really, really quickly. What's your advice for those you've seen, like Andrew Flynn, your vice president, and Jacob Hanselman's and some of those other ones that you saw that came in and kicked ass, versus those that struggled to make an impact?
So this is a good question. And I've seen this not only necessarily from graduates of the National Sales Center. I would say this is probably true of every like leader in terms of being able to continue propelling their career to the next level. And I would say is, be smart. And by be smart, I mean, I guess, align yourself with good people. That is the most important thing, right? Like, you have to be wise enough and smart enough to identify who the good people are and make sure you align with them. And that's really because, you can learn from those people. That's the most important thing. And, I've had success in my career, but even at the very beginning where we talked about there were challenges, I very quickly realized that there are things I can control, which we talked about, but then there are also people who you want to be hanging out with in terms of like connected, right? You always want to be, you don't want to be the smartest person in a room. That's a very important lesson. But I made sure that I connected with people like Brett, people like Clark, who's my chief revenue officer today, and Andrew Flynn, who's my vice president, who reports up to me. He did the same thing, right? Like, he connected with Brett, he connected with Clark, he connected with me. And we made sure that, like, if we were in with smart people, aligned with the right people, and I'm giving you an example of like who people now, there's obviously other people in the space that I try and connect with. And that has such an influence on your career, right? Like, I know for a fact that if I'm looking for an advancement in my career and I'm going to, another MLS team, I know that by knowing Brett, by knowing Clark, by knowing Jacob that you just aforementioned, by knowing Andy, who's our president, by knowing Brian Pfeiffer, who we talked about earlier, who was the VP of the league back then, and is the chief revenue officer at Minnesota United. By knowing and having a good relationship and proving out my success to these people, I know I've got a lot of people who will absolutely go to bat for me moving forward. So, as far as advancement goes, whether it's internal within an organization or external, being connected to good people will open up so many doors for you. But you can't just connect with good people, right? Like, you can attempt to connect with good people, but good people will only connect with you if you can prove out your value to them. And so doing the things that we talked about earlier helps along the way.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. Is, a lot of times, unfortunately, sports organizations, especially Big Five leagues, can become, a little bit like a fraternity or a sorority. When you go in, you want to align yourself with the cool kids and the ones that you think are, whatever. But it's really aligning with those people that are going to help push you, that are going to help make you better, that are going to, want to talk shop with you, that are going to be like, challenge you if they don't think you're doing things right that day. I think those are the things that, people lose. It's like, all right, who's the cool kid? Who's the popular kid? Let's go to lunch with them. But a lot of times they're the one that don't get the full-time job or the full-time opportunity, or will step on you to get the full-time job or opportunity, as opposed to being, who are those people that raise you up? Like, I remember even all the way back to CEB, I remember Priya Matthews, Steve Alexander. Those are the two people in my start class that I leaned on, because those are people that pushed me, positively. When I was doing well, were the first ones to say good job. They were always the first one to put a boot up my ass to make sure that I wasn't falling backwards or I wasn't not doing the work. And I'll watch their names forever on LinkedIn, and we'll shoot each other a note each year, and still root each other on. But a lot of that came from be connecting with the right people, not necessarily the cool people. Man, that was a good answer. You've had access and exposure to a lot of great leaders. Obviously you become one yourself, but getting access to people like Clark and Bryant. You've seen leaders who have struggled and challenged in situations as well. As you've thought about taking those steps into leadership as you have yourself, what are some of those things outside of getting yourself analytically oriented that people here could take away from, especially like Clark's one of the most unique leaders on the planet. Bryant's an incredibly unique leader. What are some of those things that you've taken from them that you've tried to make sure are part of who you've become as a leader?
Yeah, I think like the one thing I'll use Clark as an example because I think he's phenomenal at this. So I think you have to identify that as a leader, you're not going to do everything yourself, right? Like there's just no way. There's too much as a leader to accomplish by yourself. You need people around you to help you, whether it's you delegating work or whether it's you managing a team that is responsible for going out and selling. You can't do it yourself. You need the assistance of other people. And you can put all these processes in place, which you can control, which are bulletproof, but you still need those people to go out and execute it. So I guess my response to that is the people you have around you are the most important thing to your career. Like, as a manager, like you need to have good people around you. You need to recruit good people, and you need to when you have good people, you need to put good people in a good environment. And those are the things you can control. Now, because those are the most important facets of leadership in my mind, it's important that you can devote a sense of opportunity or provide a sense of opportunity to your people. And it's important to be able to sit down with them and identify what motivates them, what they want from their career, what they want from you, and being able to create those pathways for them is vital. And Clark is phenomenal at that. And so one thing that Clark did, and I think the example I said when he took me to coffee and asked me, why the hell are you, pissed off? You're the top rep. And like, he gave me an opportunity to provide an avenue as to what my intentions were and my goals were. And he created a path for me to get to where I needed to go. And he's excellent at that. And I'm just one example. He has always told me, Avin, if we have someone who's really freaking good and we don't have a position for them, we will either create a position for them or we will either find a position for them that's worth their weight in gold in a different organization. But we have to make good people, good people in good environments that make them accomplish what they want to accomplish. And he was great at that. Like, I mean, the amount of positions we've created in the organization because Clark believes in that philosophy is incredible. And you know what? Those reps, when you do that, or those people that you manage, when you provide them that opportunity, it's like an exponential productivity factor, right? Like when you put them in that situation because you've gone out of your way to bat for them and create an opportunity, they will work extra hard for you. And it's, as I talk about it right now, I'm kind of getting goosebumps because it's not like this short-termism in terms of thinking about your people. It's this long-termism. It's putting good people where they need to be to get to where they want. But the secret is by doing that, they're going to produce even more for you. So it's of benefit to you as well. So, I think people are the most important aspect in any walk of life, especially if you're a leader, and being able to maximize everything out of your people is key.
Yeah. And I think that while it was his biggest focus was on people, I think one of the things that's made Clark so unbelievably successful is he may not be the smartest person in every room he's in, but he has the longest view of every single person in the room that he's in. He was always thinking about, how is this going to impact us 2 years down the line? We can do this discount now, or we can do this deal now. But when we are a mature organization that is expected to make money, when we're at our season ticket numbers, how is this going to have impacted us? How is this going to challenge us? And so he made us think that way with people. And he also made that think that way every single day that we worked was, all right, we can sell $10 tickets over here, but I'm only going to let it go to teachers because we can feel good about that. And that's a group of people that may never spend more. And it's a group of people we need to get in, but we're not going to do it for this youth soccer organization over here, because this youth soccer organization needs to spend money with us, because that's what they'll have to do as a mature organization. It's definitely he's an interesting guy, and it was amazing to work. I think
He also
that's really,
has like the shortest attention span in the world. So like every meeting is always distracted with something or the other. And
I've said this before, and I'll say it publicly. Like, every single person that worked at the Crew while I was there would have run in front of a bus for Clark, and he probably didn't know 40% of their names. Like, I don't know if that's still the case now. He might be better, smaller organization, but he was like, who, like, they'd come up to him and be like, Clark, I'm so excited, we're so grateful to work here. They'd walk away, Clark would be like, what's their name again?
that is so true.
So I think that's a really good transition, because, obviously a lot of the foundational stuff that you and Clark really laid out at the Crew has been really at the backbone of what's made Austin so successful. So we can talk, on and off the field's great, but, off the field's really, the environment that this group will be in. What has made Austin so successful off the field? And when we say that, maybe you can give a little background of, where you are as an organization when it comes to season tickets, where you are when it comes to wait list, when it comes to, all these different kind of measures of business success.
Yeah. So, it is like, it's funny. Clark actually looked at me today and he's like, do you ever wonder what's going to happen if all the success goes away? I'm like, please don't say that, right? Like, but we are, like, without kind of blowing our own trumpet, I think we're very privileged. Honestly, like when I see what happens with other teams or with other leagues, sometimes I take a moment and just like really, really like feel grateful about the environment I'm in and the job that we've done to get us to where we are. And I don't want to take credit that's overdue, right? Like, I think the market was phenomenal. Like, Austin never had a professional team and really was craving it. It had grown to a point where there's so many people in Austin that weren't from Austin, that had no direct tie to the University of Texas, that really loved the city of Austin, but didn't have anything to scream and shout about. So we really did a good job of being able to identify or create this feeling that we're open to everyone in Austin, right? But we did a lot of smart things to begin with. Like, yes, Austin was primed, it was ready to go, but what were we going to do to maximize everything we could? And we, again, I must have written 12 business plans for this launch, because the environment kept changing, so I kept ripping it up and starting again. But it was so crucial because we were able to execute all the things we needed to do at the beginning. So the most important thing to begin with was to grow our database, because at the time the team was going to get announced, and at the time we were going to sell deposits and then sell season tickets, if we didn't have anyone to communicate to promote to, we wouldn't have anyone. So goal number one, get people's emails and names, and just know who to communicate to and how to communicate to. So we did that. We did a really good job. And then when we started selling season ticket deposits, I'm kind of making everything really short for this purpose. It was important for us to make sure that we didn't create any barriers for entry, right? Like, one thing I learned from Brett actually is, you don't want to give people a reason not to come. You want to give people a reason to think, yeah, 100% I'm in, like, this is a no-brainer. So our goal was, with the deposit campaign, was to make the barrier for entry so low, right? Like, the deposit was as low as $50. It was fully refundable. Do you know why? Because we backed ourselves to put the right processes in place, the right people in place to put together a plan that would convert those deposits into season tickets. We backed our idea and our plan to do that. So why would we make our deposit $2,000 and give people a reason not to do it? So that was very smart of us to create this plan. And it was like rocket fuel. I mean, we went to market and we had, before we launched, our president pulled me and Clark aside and said, how many deposits do you think you're going to get today? And I said, if we walk away with 2,000 deposits at the end of the day, I'm going to be high-fiving both of you to for the rest of the year. Our website crashed when we launched. So the phones kept ringing. We had everyone in the company on the phones, not knowing what to do, but just taking deposits down. And Clark called me over. He goes, Avin, come here. I'm like, Clark, get the hell out of here. I'm trying to get these deposits. And he goes, no, Avin, come here. So I put the phone down. I walk around the corner to this giant TV screen we have that ticks as we sell deposits. And we were at 2,800 deposits 3 minutes into the campaign. And we ended up getting 29,000 deposits that day. 29,000 deposits for a 20,000 seat stadium in day one. It was insane. So, we did a lot of things to get us there. Again, the market was ready, but how did we maximize it? We had a lot of these minor tactical kind of moves that we put in place to make sure that number was as skyrocketed as possible to maximize our business. And that was very fruitful for us. So, we're sold out of season tickets. We just had a renewal campaign going to next year. We renewed at 97%. 40% of the reason why the 3% didn't renew was because they were leaving town, right? Like they were moving out of the city. So our numbers are staggering. Now, one of the reasons why we can renew at that rate is because we can light a fire under all our season ticket holders' butts because, hey, guess what? We have a wait list of over 20,000 people. So, and then the wait list was a key component to part of our entire plan from day one. The moment we knew we had 29,000 deposits, our strategy became like, how do we leverage this demand for even more? That's when the waitlist membership kind of came to birth, and we really leveraged that. And it's a paid waitlist membership, an annual paid waitlist membership, so people keep buying into it every year. So that's been great. What else? Our other KPIs, our merch numbers are number one in the league. Our F&B numbers are like number one in the league by like 100% compared to the second place team. Our secondary market is the best freaking KPI I think I know. Our 10 games we've had this season rank 1 to 10 in SeatGeek secondary market for any game in MLS in the history except for 2. And those 2 happened to be MLS Cup last year and MLS Western Conference Final last year, both in 30,000 seat stadiums. We have a 20,000 seat stadium. So ranking number 1 to 10 is ridiculous. And our number 1 game this year outpaced the Saturday night NBA All-Star game on secondary market revenue. Our secondary market revenue average ticket price is 2.5 times our season ticket price. So when season ticket holders say, I don't see value, I say, well, screw you, give me your tickets back, because it's the proof is in the pudding, right? I don't really say that. We kind of use that as benefit to try and get them to renew, and they do. They're like, oh shit, really? I can, for the games I don't come, I can resell my ticket at 3 times the price. Yeah, absolutely. So
it's amazing. Noah asked a really good question, and I think it really goes to a lot of the work that all of you did prior to launching the team, which was years of work that y'all put in. But Noah, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, sure. Now that you've shared how successful the market is and how much demand, it kind of diminishes a little bit of the question. But still, that would be during your deposit conversion. The idea behind the question is, well, we're going to ask these people that are on the call and those of us that are going through this training in 2 weeks is to sell for a property that they've never been to, that they've never seen. And so obviously going through starting a new franchise, you could probably give some pretty good tips to that.
Yeah, I saw your question come through, and I love that question. Actually, it's an opportunity for me to plug Brett, right? So one of the things I learned from Brett that made me successful in selling group tickets is this concept of empowerment, right? Like, how do you empower people, and and how do you make people think big? And I'm not saying I did this specifically here, but I use the same kind of framing and thinking here. And Brett and I walked into a room one day for a meeting, and we had this relatively excited lady in the room. And, you know, we were trying to pitch like this group sale. And, you know, we were talking about I can't even remember, we were talking about some things. And, you know, we said, okay, what do you think? You know, what do you think you'll do here? She goes, well, what can I do? Brett, I don't even remember the story, but basically it was like, it's a blank canvas. If I could give you the keys to the stadium, what would you do? That's what Brett said. Brett asked this lady, if I could give you the keys to the stadium, what would you do? And it just opened up this freaking, this dam that just splurted out all these crazy ideas, and it all came from the client. So all we had to do was pick a few pieces that we could execute on, and she was extra motivated to go. So it wasn't exactly that we did here, but it was the thinking of, look, how do we think big? How do we get people to think like this is really big? So there are a couple of things. We taught our reps to have like this mindset of, you know, this thing is going to be phenomenally huge, right? Like we want to share the story. It's all about framing, right? So we did a really good job of empowering the reps to empower their clients to get a sense of how amazing this feeling is going to be when you walk into the stadium. It's not going to be, I'm not buying a product, I'm buying a product of the product, right? Like I'm buying what the seat and the ticket does for me. I'm not buying the seat of the ticket, right? I'm buying about like watching the first freaking professional goal that takes place in this damn city. I'm thinking about how that, you know, the supporter section is going to like give me chills the moment we score that first goal. It's all those, it's about me being able to take my kids to the first ever professional game and professional stadium in Austin. It's all those kind of really, really cool things that put people in a place where they're framed into like this environment. So that was like the non-tangible things, right? Of course, there are other like more tangible things. Like we talked through what the premium experience was going to be huge, because we were charging an arm and a leg for premium, like club seats, numbers that most NBA teams don't do, right? And we had to educate people, because the smart people with money that are going to be buying this products, they're not just giving you the money. They're smart for a reason. I can't tell you how many people told me, well, I did some research around the suite prices in the MLS, and they average like $60,000 a suite for a season. And I'm sitting here charging $200,000 a suite. And so they're smart. And so how am I going to kind of put them in a position to understand that this is completely different? So it's the framing of the conversation and what the experience is going to look like. But for those premium, we knew we didn't have something tangible, so we had to do other things. We took them on tours of the construction side of the stadium. We created an experience center. This experience center was basically an opportunity to get them to the office to meet us one-on-one. But part of that would be walking them through like a storytelling experience with obviously, you know, artwork and stuff like that, telling them about the league, telling them about Austin FC, telling them about our stadium, and then taking them into like this 3D seat viewer experience, not viewer, 3D immersive like igloo experience, where it's like this. And, you know, we invested in technology to do that, but it gave us an opportunity to put people in an environment where they could have a little bit more of a sense of feeling and touching what this experience was going to look like. And then we took them to a room where we basically said, here's the contract, you ready to sign? And, you know, they were blown away by it and they signed. And it's funny because after like a couple of the games last year, I had people who told me no to buying like two, like loges, let's say, for example. He came up to me and said, Avin, I fucked up, man. I should have bought two like you told me. I was like, Rod, I don't know what to tell you, man. I'm sorry. So, you know, that just perpetuates like the sense of demand and interest and like belonging that people have to this club. And we were able to create that without having anything tangible. I won't kind of vaguely answer that question. I hope I did, but yeah.
No, it's good. And I think it covers a lot of what we talked about today. You know, a lot of it is, you know, learning a lot about your client, but also making sure you frame the experience for them. You know, we talk about, you know, that idea of FOMO, like what are they going to be missing out on if they're not a part of this? And you may not have a story that's as open as Austin FC is to be able to tell, but you've got to figure out what that story is for your team to be able to tell, about why this is the moment to connect, why this is the moment to get people out. And I think that's so critical, because if you don't get people caught up in that, they're just going to make a decision not to do that. And that's more relevant in 2022 than it was, even back in, 2012, 2013, 2014, when we were in Columbus. It's more critical that you're able to tell that story now and get people involved now.
Yeah, no, and like, for us now, we have something tangible, and it really is one of the most remarkable places to go to an event. It is the best soccer experience in the United States. There's no question about it. And we don't really have to sell it. I mean, the moment people taste it, it's like, holy shit, I want more. And that's a testament to our fans and our environment, but also like the construction of our stadium, the operational flow of the stadium, and also like, making sure that we manage expectations. Like, the one thing you don't want to do in an environment that we were in is you don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. And so being honest and frank with people is also extremely important in terms of that process, right? Like, some people said, like, I want to have access to liquor. And instead of saying, well, all the clubs will have access to liquor, we made sure we had a plan as far as what clubs had liquor, what clubs didn't, in terms of included. And we were telling them the truth so that they made the right decision. And, if after year one, the right decision wasn't made, then if we're open to finding new avenues for them to go to the right place, then that's important. But we made sure we created like these buffers to allow us to protect against our mistakes that we may have made, because even for us, we didn't have anything tangible to really know. So it was also a learning experience for us, not just the clients.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like this question from Tim. I think it's interesting. If you were thinking about running like, the PLL right now, or maybe even like a National Lacrosse League team, what would be some of the things that you've learned from your experiences now in soccer, selling both a traditional MLS team, a new MLS team? What would you take into a different sport or a different market to be able to really sell that?
So are you saying like for sales reps, or are you saying as like starting a new PLL club?
I don't know. I'm saying like maybe both. Like, I think it's kind of a fun question on both levels.
Yeah. So I think, I'll take institutionally, right? Like, I think the most important thing that we did when we started this Austin FC was we casted the widest net possible, right? Like, you don't want to only target a certain group here and there. Like, you can start focusing on that later on, but at the very onset, you want to bring as many people as possible into your sphere of influence, right? Like I said, we need to make sure we can get as many people that we can communicate to. We need to make the barrier for entry like non-existent. We need to invite as many people into this as possible, and then back ourselves to be able to kind of convert them. So every time, and by the way, like, every expansion league in the expansion team in the country calls me and says, what the hell did you guys do? And, I try to I don't give them a copy and paste of my blueprint, but sometimes they do get it and they just copy and paste the freaking thing. And they do the exact same plan we did, and good for them. But I think a lot of people have called me and asked me, and I think the most important thing I said is like, always cast a wide net. Please make sure you have as many people you can communicate to, because that's the most important thing. Once you have someone's information, you communicate to them, you have influence to be able to change perception, opinions, or sell someone. If you don't have their information, or if you don't welcome them into this environment by making it a difficult barrier for entry, it's problematic. As far as like salespeople, as a manager, I mean, I think it's important to identify what your goals are, and then back into those goals, right? And if it means like hiring more people or hiring less people or incentivizing them one way over another, it's all dictated and governed by what your goal and objective is. So I know this is a very like vague answer, but it's difficult for me to kind of specifically say, I'd make this sales contest for my reps. By the way, I do lots of sales contests. I like doing them, right? Like, because I like to have fun in the office and create this culture. So we do all these like fun kind of prizes, but also fun, sales, but like we turn them into games that get people into it. So yeah, there's stuff like that, I guess.
I like it. I mean, it's, I've gone and I've done some of those too. What's your favorite sales contest?
No, my favorite sales contest is definitely not Brett Zalaski's Survivor sales contest that lasted about 2 months. It was like forever. I mean, what happened was basically it was like
Avin got voted out early, so
no, I got voted out at the end. I came second. I was so pissed. I did all that work politicking and then didn't even win. I was so irritated. But no, but like I'll tell you, my favorite sales contest, we do a couple of really good ones. So, whenever like a big tournament comes around, let's say the World Cup comes around, maybe every time a rep sells whatever they need to sell, depending on like what they sell, they get a different weight in terms of, and they can select a team that's a country in the world, let's say, right? And it's a random selection. And Noah, you may get France. Brett, you may get Uganda. Carter may get Brazil. But then what happens is the World Cup takes place and you're tied to that team. And depending on how that team performs in the World Cup, you get whatever prize. But you also get prize, like, why should you be compromised if you get Uganda? So we do other things like if you get most countries in the world, regardless of whether they're in the World Cup or not, you get X prize. So like we do all these different things, but we try and tie it to something that's happening in real life so that it builds extra connection. So yeah, that's one example. We do a bunch of other stuff. So
Survivor was a gigantic success. So I know I asked another good question. I think this is good. Everybody here is, a couple months away, hopefully from, really interviewing for full-time positions. I know you talked about work ethic. That's one of the hardest things to interview for. What in a room in an interview are you looking for that this group should be aware of?
So outside of work ethic, right? Like I think I try and ask thought-provoking kind of questions just to really get people's mind going. And I'm really doing that to do a couple of things. One, I like smart, like I'm trying to identify who's smart, and I want to get the smartest person, because I know that if I feel like if I get someone smart, maybe they'll kind of teach me something too. So like getting the smart people is important, because that's a basis, right? Like work ethic is a basis, smartness is a basis. The other thing I love is competitiveness. So I will challenge people every day in the office. I will like poke people, not actually physically, but I'll nudge them. I'll basically try and kind of course this competitive juice that comes out of everyone, and like really put people against each other, because I want people to be competitive. I want people to feel like I'm being at the bottom of the board, or I want people to feel like being second on the board is like a failure. Because I feel like competitiveness drives people to maximize and exponentially be more productive. And some people just aren't competitive, and that's totally fine. It depends on the job function, right? Like in sales, if you're not competitive, I don't know that I'd be interested in hiring you, to be honest. So, competitiveness is just is also another fundamental, bare minimum.
Well, sales is one of those things where there's some fun hypocrisies, right? You've got to be a great teammate. You've got to be someone that people want to be rooting for on the floor too. But you also want to be that person where you might root for someone, but then grit your teeth, get back in, because you've got to be the next person that makes that sale. So it's one of those interesting ones where
honestly, I used to get so pissed off with one of my really good friends used to sell a shit ton of tickets. I used to get so pissed off, but I mean, it was good for the collective good, but my God, it drove me up the wall. And that's kind of what I want, right? Like in Columbus, it wasn't as if they were taking inventory away from me. So it didn't really hurt me. Over here in Austin, when a sales rep sees another person sell tickets or sell like some block of inventory, that's double whammy, because that's inventory you're taking away from being able to sell the limited inventory that the other salesperson has. access to. So it's almost like a fight to survive kind of thing. And yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So we're running right up on the time. Where can everybody here find you, and what's your last piece of advice for them?
I'm available on LinkedIn. I'm not great, but I'm available. I check it every now and then. And then last piece of advice is, let's see here. Work hard. Work very hard, be competitive, and tie yourself to the right people, right? Like make sure you're connected to the right people. That's the most important thing, I think I would say, you know?
Yeah, for sure. But I'll see you on the, what is it, the 29th?
What's on the 29th?
Isn't that when Bale's in town?
26th. Are you coming?
26th. All right. What's that? Yeah. Right me in. We'll be back from the back east here at the 11th. So.
All right, sounds good, man. Take it easy.
All right, buddy. Good to see you, Vin. Thanks so
Bye-bye.
much for dropping
Yeah.
by. Appreciate everybody here. Remember to sign up for role plays if you haven't already, and we'll see the rest of you tomorrow.
Bye.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.